Imagine you were someone who was called Kali, who was called the dark beauty, the black beauty, and overconfident as a child. And then you became a biggest leader in your industry and also a beauty queen. How would that be? Well, our today's guest is someone who's a multifaceted personality. Shreya Krishnan is the Senior Vice President of Marketing and Communication at the Aon Insurance Brokers Limited, and she's also the CSR specialist in the organization. But is that all? No, Shreya is also a beauty queen, a former beauty queen, who is a poet, who's a dancer, who is an actor, a model, and also calls herself the Earth Warrior. She's a person who has multi-talents, multi-interests, and believes in doing everything to perfection. Recently, she has written a co-authored book called Words Matter, the words that women or girls should speak, about what kind of communication that can change the narrative for women out there in the world. She is a strong evangelist for diversity and inclusion and believes that the world needs to be a better place, and it is the women who can make that difference. So here we have Shreya inside the interview today at the Setback Leadership Podcast. So come on, jump in there. Let's listen to her story. Hi Shreya, welcome to the Setback Leadership Podcast, and it has been quite a while before we could actually get you in the podcast. So I am super thrilled today. What's like it for you? How are you feeling?
I'm feeling really happy and thrilled, Shri, because we've been planning to do this so many times now. It's just not happened. So finally to actually be here and in conversation with you, I'm really excited. And I'm looking forward to it because I've heard all of the other conversations. So I'm looking forward to this one for sure.
Super duper. So let's get straight into the topic. And the first thing that I want to ask you is about you, about your journey. How did you become the leader that you are today? I know some of it, I'm sure, but then the audience would love to hear it from you. So tell us more about your journey, how you became you.
Actually, I never had a plan. So, when people ask me who you are, I don't start with what I do. I start with who I am. I'm somebody who's seeking. I'm somebody who wants to experience life for all that it offers. I'm somebody who's wanting to look at this entire experience of what we do with our lives to be fulfilling and to be able to create some form of impact. I think it all started with impact for me. I wanted to be this environmental journalist, writing about the environment and talking about sustainability and all of that. So I did my courses also like that. I did my degree in environmental sciences. I got a degree in journalism and media studies. I did some English literature based material and work for me to be able to delve into all of these areas of interest. And that's how I started. My first job was as a journalist at the Hindu, and it was one of those newspapers that I really respected. So that's how I started. And then things happened. And as you said, there's been no looking back. I've always worked, thankfully, in the development sector as a parallel, but my mainstream job became more towards marketing and events and all of that. So I think I've parallelly run about 3 or 4 journeys in the time that I have worked, from the time I finished college to the time I've worked. There is my entire journey with my career, which was mainstream marketing and comms. There was CSR. There was all of those aspects of my career. There was my social impact work. Right now, I consult and work with 5 not-for-profits. I do a lot of social impact work with them. So that continued because the CSR piece came into play, etc., etc. Then there was my whole dancing and my theater and my acting and my modeling piece that also continued parallelly. Out of the last, I think, 16 years plus of working, I ran my own consulting firm for 4 years. I've worked with multiple organizations across various stages. I used to be an event anchor as well. So I continue to anchor events. I do a lot of corporate shows and events. So I've just been really, I think, lucky. And I'm so grateful to the universe because I got so many opportunities. It's not often that people get to do everything that they want to and they like to. I think I'm one of those souls that the universe has always sort of said, do you want to do this? Do you want to try this? Take it. Here's an abundance of opportunities thrown your way. So, and then there was, of course, the whole pageant journey and all of that as well. So there's been multiple parallel, lifetimes running. And of course, there's the whole journey of me becoming a mother, my daughter, and what that means to my leadership. And, so I've always been an early starter, a bit of an early starter, always had teams working with me. Even in my 20s, in my early 20s, I had people reporting into me when I was 22, I think was the first time I got a team of my own. So I think for me, I have always been humbled by the magnanimity of the people around me and the beauty of the leadership of the people around me. And I've always been inspired by everyone I meet. So for me, it's about that experience. And I think there is a combined truth in what leadership is in what your philosophy of life is, and how all of that really comes together, because they're not separate things. Who you are as a leader is who you are as a person. And I think that to me is in a nutshell my journey. And like I said, I've always gone with the flow. I've never had a plan. I've never said I have to do this and this is the path I'm going to take. No, it's more been like, this excites me. Let me try it out. And every single time I've just been, like I said, grateful for everything that I've been able to do with those opportunities. So,
like that was a huge laundry list of things, I must say. Okay, I'm sure many of the audience members now wondering, how does she manage it all, right? But I'll ask her that question a little later. You guys have to hold on to it. Right now, I'm going to take her back to the topic of the podcast, and the topic of the podcast, as we all know, is about breaking the glass ceilings. And you talk about breaking the glass ceilings, Shreya has been shattering them left, right, and center with all her initiatives, everything, every single time. If you don't believe me, you must check her out in Instagram. You will know what exactly do I mean. So Shreya, I know you are a glass ceiling breaker evangelist. I will call you that, right? And I have my reasons to do that. I mean, the first time I have met you, you were hosting an event in Bangalore in one of the events, and you did a belly dancing on the stage as an MC wearing a sari. I remember that incident very, very well. And I was like, what the hell did she just do on stage, right? So that is start of breaking glass ceilings. So Shrey, I want to get onto your head here, right, about these stereotypes, these glass ceilings that exist in our world. What does those mean to you, first of all?
so I think I was always an idealist. Okay. So I think that's really helped me. Being an optimist and an idealist has its downs, but I think the upside that it has is incredible, because I never believed it existed. So when you yield, so they always say, right, it's not the fear that exists, it's the courage beyond fear that will take you forward. So I never believed it existed. And every time somebody said, you can't do this, I'll be like, really? It's like that line that says, watch me do it. I'll do it, take photos twice and show you that I can do it. So to me, everything was, I'm quite fiercely competitive and I will take on any challenge. This is not something a lot of people know about me, because it's quite because if you challenge me to do something, I will do it. And I think growing up through the ladder of careers that I've been through, I have met my fair share of people who said, that I was too young, or having an assertive woman in a space who's young and who speaks her mind and who's not afraid to speak the truth doesn't always work for you very well, especially when you're building a career. But I think what happened was I decided to stick to my ground. I said, I'm not going to change because the world expects me to change. I am that person. I am that person who will do a belly dance in front of the spaces of people. And, I am not somebody who's going to have a smoke screen or a mask put on me. So I think my ability to shatter the glass ceiling, as you say it, is because I refused to allow it to stop me from doing what I wanted to do. I said, I will not acknowledge your existence, because if I acknowledge your existence, that means I'm giving you power. I'm taking away from my power. And my power lies in the fact that I will exist in a space where I will not allow that glass ceiling to stop me from doing anything that I want to do. And you can be anybody, right? Because genders, I've had issues with both sides of the gender when it comes to leadership or when it comes to acknowledging. And I've had support also from both sides of the gender. So gender is irrelevant, really. It's more about the kind of people that nurture you and the kind of people that derail you. And I've always given power to the people that nurture me. And I'm in a space where I am so grateful for the kind of people that I've met and nurtured and found, and who have nurtured me back and nourished my journey, because there is so much beauty in that. So I think for me, it was about finding the right people who would stand ground for me as I stood my ground without giving up space for anybody. And also to be able to say that I'm not going to buckle down or bow down because there's a certain expectation that comes from me, unless that expectation comes from an informed, understandable space which makes sense to me. If it doesn't make sense to me, and if it's not speaking to my heart and my value system and my head, and if it's not going to be something that's going to help other people, then I'm not going to do it. I will just, find a sidestep. I've never pissed people off too much. I think I piss off a lot of trolls, but not people I've worked with.
Yeah. Trolls are anyway so much pissed off with you. We get to see that every day and in out, right? And in fact, we have a lot of fun reading those comments. And I actually laugh out. I'm like seriously, what are you even saying? What are you even doing? Right? What's wrong with you? But having said that, Shrey, you in your life has been through many stereotypes, right? First of all, being a dark-skinned person, I know, and you have also faced challenges like, okay, she does things that anybody and everybody would not think of. For example, body positivity is something that you really, really talk about, and you also talk about. Being vocal about what you feel, how you think about the world, and what your thought process, right? So can you really pinpoint a couple of those momentum incidents that made a shift or made a real strong difference in you?
So I remember I had written this poem a long time ago called Let Me Tell You the Story of a Dark-Skinned Girl. It was my journey because I was called Kaali, Karpi, all of those standard names. People in weddings would stop and say, "Tu Kali hai, lekin tu sundar hai." Black beauty was a very common phrase that was used for me. And I kept thinking, but why is skin, what is this obsession with skin color? Again, I refused to allow people's opinions of me because it didn't matter to me. My skin color didn't matter to me. And I don't think other people's opinions of my skin color matter to me. So I grew up being very confident, and everybody used to call it overconfidence. I still remember that. Oh, she's so overconfident. And I know where that stems from now, right? When you look at conditioning, a dark-skinned girl who wears big specs, and when I was growing up, I had 2 pigtails and I wore oversized clothes, and I was this, of course, it's a stereotype, but I was dressed in those days as the stereotypical tomboy, and they just couldn't get where my confidence came from. Now, the best part is my confidence did not come from the way I looked at all, ever in my life, right? So my confidence comes from a space of me knowing what I'm saying, me having invested time, energy, effort in growing the person that I am, in reading, in traveling, in gaining knowledge. So I was very surprised and amused when people call it overconfidence, because I'm like, my confidence doesn't come to me because of my skin color or the way I look or the size I am or the fact that I wear spectacles or the fact that I have, whatever it is or whoever it is that I am. So growing up like that with that kind of conditioning, I just decided to not give it any bhav or weightage. But I remember once when I read out that poem, there was this mother of this young girl who was apparently dark-skinned who came to me and said, "Can you give me that poem? Because my daughter keeps asking me, Mama, why did God make me like this? Why am I dark?" And that point in time, I just said, this is why I need to speak up. Because if I can share my story and if I can tell my story to the world, and there is somebody who feels, lesser because of the way they've been conditioned to believe that they're lesser, not because they are, but because that's what's being fed into them, whether it's media or whether it's society or whatever it is, to be able to break that and to be able to tell their stories and stand in their power and embrace who they are, that's one of the most powerful things. When you can embrace who you are as a person, and when you know who you are and what you're capable of, and when you forgive yourself for all of these things that conditioning has built over the years, it's so liberating. You come into such an independent, happy headspace that you're not bogged down by log kya kahenge or log kya keh rahe the. So I think that's when I made a decision to not stop talking about it, to not stop calling out people who deserve to be called out. I continue to be kind. I'm even kind to my trolls because I believe they don't know better. So I'm trying to engage in sort of trying to educate them, saying they don't know better, which is why they behave the way they do. So I do try to come from a space of kindness, but I will not tolerate anybody diss somebody on the behalf of structures or societal norms or judge people. So I don't allow people to do that around me. Actually, my friends call me activist auntie. They keep saying
you are one.
Auntie ka pata nahi, but you are definitely an activist. There's no doubt about it. Who's calling you auntie? They are grandparents.
So my friends say, "Oh, activist auntie, aa gaye, aap chup raho." No sexist jokes, no racist comments. So I don't allow for these kind of things to happen around me, and I think it's a good thing because it starts at home. It starts in your friend circles. If you can stop people and if you can make them think about what they're saying and try to make them think whether it's appropriate or inappropriate, and if you can be conscious, whether it's ableism, so language is very powerful, right? Which is why I wrote the book with Jessie, because I believe language has so much power to heal and also to, break these stereotypes and norms. So for me, it was that I said, I will not. So that was one instance. And I remember another instance where I was at office and I needed some help with somebody who sat on the floor. And this was a BPO floor. And we had lots of people on that floor. I didn't know this girl, but I walked up to her and I said, do you mind giving me this or something like that? And she said, sure. And as she was doing that for me, she said, I've been meaning to talk to you, but I never got a chance. I'm a single mother. I have a 7-year-old son. My husband left me for somebody else. It was a love marriage. So my parents threw me out of the house. I can't go back to them. I have this job. My son goes to my neighbor's house after school and is there for 2 hours, in that house on his own. And then I go back to him. And she said, I have been following you. I've been reading a lot of what you write. And this was back then before I was on Instagram. This is Facebook. And she said, I follow you on Facebook. And she said, every time you write this, it gives me courage that I can do this. Even when I'm lonely, even when I'm tired, I feel I should be able to do this. And I keep showing my son these images and I tell him that, see, look at this auntie, if she can do it, I'm like her, I can do it too. And she said, I tell my friends to read what you write. And that moment in time, I was like, oh my God, there are people who I don't know in some form. I can in some way share their pain or be there for them because of what I'm saying or writing. And if I can't do it in person, at least if I can do it in this way, of course, I'm giving myself way too much credit. But just the fact that somebody said that to me was just made my day, my month, my year. And I think to be able to just share my stories so people feel somewhere that they're not alone. That I think is why I continue to do what I do with as much love that I can bring into it.
Wow. I mean, this is something beyond just the clinical way of doing things, right? This comes from a place of passion, from a place of empathetic thinking about others, and so on and so forth. And I always believe that teaching or telling or sharing your story can really become somebody else's anchor. You don't know whom you can actually impact without you knowing that they have been impacted, and you get to know that only when they come and tell you, and very rarely they do. So I think, that's exactly why, Shrey, I love you at the way you work. And, I'm not being biased at all. I mean, of course, I am biased. I love her. That's there.
But then, honestly,
But honestly, the kind of work that Shrey does, you do, Shrey. I mean, it's just beyond thinking, beyond doing it. I mean, you're supposed to be a marketing head and marketing and communications head in an organization. But other than that, There are so many layers of you that is there. Being a dark girl who was called Kali at one point in time to becoming the beauty queen and becoming that oomph factor model and becoming that Instagram influencer is a big deal. Let me tell you that, right? And you've done it with a lot of grace. That's what I would say. So here I want to ask you another question again for the audience here. I'm sure you're going to impact a lot of them. Uh, so as you rightly said that you never paid heed to those people calling you this that because you never associated yourself with the way you looked. Then where did your confidence come from?
I think my confidence came from the fact that one, I was not afraid. I grew up in a home where we were all, all of us women, like my grandmother, my mother, my aunt, me. My brother was the only boy in two generations. So my house is filled with women, and in a house filled with women, whatever you're good at, you do because you're good at it. There is no differential. And we're a matriarchal family. So when I grew up, I never saw gender differently because my mom was also very impartial when it came to me and my brother. We never had these things of, special treatment for him. And no, it was never like that. So I grew up in an environment where everything was equal. So when I went out into the world, although it wasn't equal, I expected it to level up and make the space around me equal. I said, I will not settle because I will only expect this. And if I settle, then I'm settling for something that I'm not used to. And I don't want it in my life because this feels right. That doesn't. So I think my confidence came from the fact that I was not ready to buckle down. Nobody could shut me up. I think that's why they used to call it overconfidence. I would always speak my mind and I would speak my truth and I would say, I'm sorry if I messed up. Because I still do that. I mean, we're all learning, we're all, on this journey, and I can mess up. I'm not perfect. I'm human. And my confidence also comes from that because I can say sorry without thinking it's lesser of me to be saying sorry to somebody. And I think my confidence comes to me from the fact that I know that I'm doing my best and the intent for anything that I do comes from a space of truth and passion and joy and desire to do right by people, by planet, by everything that I do. And so I think to me, my confidence stems from the fact that it's very rooted and grounded. I'm not flying on some level saying, oh, I am this person. I don't actually. It's quite amusing because everywhere we go, people say, oh, she's this and that. And I'm like, please don't embarrass me. Because a lot of times people haven't believed it. I'm like, can you not? And then they're like, no, Google her, Google her. I'm like, can we not get into this, please? So I think my confidence comes from the fact that it's something that's divine. It's not because of what I do. It is because of who I am, I think, as a person. So it comes from there.
Awesome. I think, the word divine struck a chord with me. And whenever I've asked many of the leaders the way they have spoken about themselves, how they have conducted themselves, it's primarily that the basics, the roots where you have come from, how you were brought up. You were talking about you come from a matriarchal family where you had many women and not many men in the family, right? So, in my family also, I was the first child. Okay. I have a sister, and both of us are girls. We don't have a brother. My father was always a person who will push us forward, saying that you need to find your own solutions.
Yeah.
You shouldn't be dependent or something or somebody for finding some solutions. I remember there was an incident. This I must tell you. It's an incident that will fall really beautifully here. We were in Calcutta. I was probably 18, 19 at that point in time. And I was just moving from my small town in West Bengal to Calcutta, the big city. And we were in this big fat Howrah station with so much crowd and so much hustle bustle and all that. And we didn't know which platform our train was supposed to come.
Okay.
And there were the TTs, the collectors. They were standing there, and they were very rude. Anybody would go and talk to them, they will like, hey, they'll just go berserk and abuse them.
Snappy. Huh.
They were like snapping people left, right, and center. And we were seeing it from far away. But we had to find out which platform our train was going to be. And of course, in those days, we didn't have the digital displays and all of it. It was all about, the announcements, and you had to continue listening to the announcement and so on and so forth. When I looked at my father and, with a intention, with an expectation that he will go and ask the TT about the platform, he looked at me, gave a smirk and said, "This is your challenge. Go talk to the TT." And I was like, okay. So, why on earth will you let your daughter, who's just moving from a small town in West Bengal to a big city, go fight somebody who she doesn't even know and, talk to them and find the information and bring it out? I found that challenge very intriguing. And I was irritated with him. I'm like, what is this? You ask me to do all random shit like that. But then I went and carefully I asked, "Sir, where it is?" And seeing me, I don't know, he found it he found it easy to talk to me and didn't snap me. He quietly answered that. That was an experience of a lifetime. I'll tell you why. Because that experience taught me not necessarily the person will be snapping at you just because he's behaving that way too with others. So you cannot judge the person by one behavior.
Yeah.
And probably that was my first experience of stop judging people.
Your father is a very wise man. Your father is a very wise man.
There's no doubt about it. And I think that is one of the reasons what I am today, how am I today, and I always say this, that if he wasn't a person who never treated me like a girl or a boy, was a normal human being who needed to find their ways and threw me into the ocean to learn swimming, I would not be able to maneuver through this world that I am doing today.
So great.
You're so right. You're so right, because it is people like that who we trust in our life, and they push us out to do something beyond our comfort zone. We will only listen to them. If it was somebody else, we wouldn't have, right? So It is the role that these people play when they neatly nudge us out of our comfort zones into spaces that we haven't been in. That's when we're truly challenged, and that's when we learn so much.
Yes, so true. And, so I think from there, I want to ask you another question. And this question is around women right now, especially women or people who are going through such kind of challenges, right? A lot of women I see specifically that they treat these stereotypes or these challenges or these setbacks that they face in the face of their career. They take a back seat and then they crib, and then they regret throughout their life, saying that I couldn't do it or I didn't do it. What do you think should you say to them, and how can they probably come out of this kind of challenges?
So one of the not-for-profits I work for, I'm actually a co-founder with them, is Wow Kitty, and we believe in the financial independence of women as to be the most empowering thing. I'm not talking logic, I'm not talking social sciences, I'm talking sheer math, right? Numbers, economics. When a woman goes into work and when a woman is financially independent, the kind of economic stability that, the home she's in, she brings into that home space. And similarly, if you look at multiple women, then the region, the country, the world, the kind of numbers are mind-boggling. There's also research to show that women who go to work inspire their children more and better in comparison to women who choose to stay at home. Now, choosing to stay at home is a powerful thing. I think it's beautiful. I have a lot of friends who are stay-at-home mothers who have very fulfilling lives. But I keep pushing them to do something because I believe that purpose is very, very important. And your children are not your purpose. We confuse our children to be our purpose. No, children will have their own purpose. They will come to it. Our job is to point them in a direction, like in the prophet Khalil Gibran says, they are but the arrows that go forth from our bows. We are the bows. We are only pointing and we are letting go. I think it's important for women to get out and get to work and do interesting things. And that work can be anything that's fulfilling for them. There's no definition of work. Two, I think there is massive ability for women when they find financial independence, who are going through really tough times, to find themselves. So there's a lot of mental health related connection to women and working women, etc. So when you look at the diaspora of the kind of research and material that's available, whether it's social, economic, mathematical, statistical, science-based, mental health-based, all of it points in one direction, and that is to say, do what you want to. And that what you want to needs to come from a space of being well-informed, knowing what your options are, having an awareness of the space, spending some time researching, understanding, knowing what it is that you want to do and why you want to do it. One of the most powerful questions of all time is, why do you do what you want to do, or why are you doing what you're doing? And what is this you're doing? And for what reason are you doing? And what is it fulfilling in you as a need? When you question that, I think finding purpose for women becomes such a liberating thing. And I keep talking about freedom and liberation because conditioning holds you back. Right? It has to be your decision. And that when I say it's my decision, a lot of times that my decision is coming from what are the people telling me, what is society telling me, what is my family telling me, what's my husband telling me, what's my mother telling me, what's the TV telling me, what's the news telling me, what's the prime minister saying. Literally, it's basically all of that. Can you cut out the noise and look at what it is that you want and go after that? Because when you cut out the noise, you will arrive at what it is that is at the core of you. And when you arrive at that, then when you have that clarity, which does not have all of this log, as I call it, the log noise, which is the outside noise, you will really find out what it is that gives you and ticks you and pushes you in a direction that you want to go in. So to everybody who feels that, restraint, or they feel upset or angry or struggling with the space they're in, look within, cut out the noise without. And only when you go in will you know what you can do on the outside. And there is massive power in that, in being able to tap into who you are at your core and what drives you. Then you'll realize that a lot of times you haven't given yourself the time, energy, or effort that you probably give the rest of your family. You're neglecting yourself, which is where your unhappiness is coming from. And because you're unhappy on the inside, even when you're giving, it's a grudged giving. You're holding back because you're not fully in it. So being mindful of what it is that drives you becomes so crucial to find the direction that you want to go in. And I urge every single woman out there who is in a stuck space in some form, whether it's in the growth in their careers, whether it's whatever it is, it starts with you. The responsibility is yours. It's not the world around you. And I keep saying this. If you want an equal world, you need to stop asking for special privileges. Yes, I know it's a long journey. Yes, I know we need to look at equality, equity, social justice. But I'm talking about women that I know around me, who are already at that social justice level, right? So I'm not trying to get them to that space. I'm saying if you're already in that space, don't demand for special privileges. Keep the special privileges for those that need them.
Yes.
Make sure that you level up to an equal world that you want to see around you. You can't say, I want special privileges, I want this and I want that. At the same time, you can't diss somebody else's feminism. Feminism is a spectrum, right? It's not a black and white, or it's not one area. There's a spectrum of feminists. There are feminists who are saying, don't make me the poster girl of your kind of feminism. There was in total one bra burned through the entire history of feminism, which has become this symbol, and it's as if every woman who's a feminist has burnt all the bras. No, it's not. There is, the stories of feminism are myriad. There is intersectionality that we need to look at in terms of feminism. There's caste-based feminism, race-based feminism. The BLM movement brought in so many conversations which were important and relevant. So when you're looking at this as a spectrum, don't diss somebody else's parade. Focus on your parade. Go within. Support those around you. If you disagree, respectfully disagree, and make space for them to exist as well. Who says that opposing, magnets, the two poles, the earth is together, the poles are still apart?
Yeah.
It doesn't mean you can't coexist. Opposing opinions, opposing thoughts, opposing ideals can comfortably coexist in an environment where you respect the other person. And that other person can be anybody. So nurture that. Nurture yourself first. And then the world around you will fall into place automatically.
How beautiful is that? You said look inside, and then only you can do great things for outside world. And I couldn't agree more on that. Many women I see, they're blaming their situation, they're blaming this, they're blaming their families, they're blaming their husbands, and blah and blah and blah. My question to them is, what have you done to make it better for you?
Change your narrative. Change your narrative. That I've been doing therapy now for a while. I've been doing a lot of spirituality work. When what I've realized is everything that's happening to you is the law of attraction. You're attracting that.
Yes.
What you're saying is what's happening to you. So the more you focus on what's not working, more of what's not working is going to happen to you. I mean, philosophical leadership and spiritual leadership is something that I'm really getting into, because it's aligning so much with my value system now, that I see when I say that this is happening to me and I'm being helpless, I am being helpless because I have chosen to be helpless. And that's a very profoundly powerful thing, right? Yes, there are victims. Yes, there is all of that. But that is, at least in the kind of circles that we come from, we have enough awareness to be able to fight fundamentally those issues. And for those that are coming up, right? Which is why I keep saying, go to work, because if you go to work, there'll be a nanny, a cook, a maid, that many more employed. When a woman goes to work, there's an entire ecosystem she's creating, which is why I said the science, the maths, the logic, all of it comes together. Now is the time, today, now, when you're listening to this and you feel you've not done something that you want to do it now. Start now. Don't wait for tomorrow.
Superb. I think I have a question for the audience right now. And the audience question is, what is that you're doing right now to change your situation? Tell us in the comments. With that, Shrey, I want to move on to your corporate journey right now, right? I mean, you are a big leader in your organization, and you work on, communication, you work on marketing, and so on and so forth. So as a leader in the corporate, have you seen practices that raises an eyebrow and you wonder, why is this something being there? And what measurements have you taken as a leader to make sure that those practices, I'm not calling them out, but those practices are abolished over a period of time?
I will start with the simplest thing that's around me all the time, and that I keep raising my eyebrows and rolling my eyes: mansplaining and sexist commentary.
Oh my God.
Unconscious. Is very unconscious. Very like, "Bacha, main sikhaunga, sun lo." I'm like, and then I'm just looking, because I'm sorry, I have finished that thought, gone 15, 100 thoughts ahead. And then I'm pulling myself back and saying, yes, you're explaining this to me because. So I'll start with that, right? So there are things and practices that happen around you all the time. And for me, I was brought up in a very strongly ethical household. My grandfather told us stories of value systems and ethics. It's like he stamped our brains. And, we grew up with Panchatantra and Jataka and fables. And we grew up reading, learning, imbibing value systems. And, in the entire form and manner, the ethical way, the sincere way, the integrity was stamped into our souls for whatever reason. And that's that standard middle class upbringing of saying, you don't do something wrong and you're protected for life.
Mm-hmm.
So I think as I grew, I realized the power of these values, because what happens when you're so strong, the confidence piece is coming back to what you asked me about confidence. I think my values give me confidence, because I know that I'm not doing anything to harm anybody consciously, that I haven't bribed anybody, that, I have not resorted to a practice. I will struggle myself rather than go down that route and, find a shortcut or an easy methodology. So in terms of the value systems that we were brought up with, that's what we were taught every day, to align to it, to stick to it. So when it comes to leadership, I think I do the same thing. I think about, what is it that I can allow around me? Are there people around me that can speak for themselves? Can I empower them? Because then I don't need to be their mouthpiece. Because at work, if you sort of nudge and, bring your team to look at things, and there are things you can do which is not overt. There are covert things you can do. There are overt things you can do. And different situations demand different approaches. So what I realized is, one is, of course, to stand up for it, or to, if it's not happening to me, to allow for that person to stand up for themselves, or nudge them or urge them. And if they haven't done it, you do it, you step up, and then you say, I have done it now. Now it's your responsibility to do it for yourself and to spot it if it's happening to somebody else. And then to call it out. Stand up, stick together, because it can be anything, right? Again, gender no bar. It can be a man who's at the other end of the spectrum, who's feeling not heard, or who's feeling out of his depth, or something like that. And what we need to do is to stand up and stick up for each other, because the most successful teams are the ones that don't operate with biases, that don't operate with, it's your thing versus my thing. You are one, and that collective consciousness, if you can build, and it's again something you can do powerfully, right? In a circle, I strongly believe in circular leadership. And if in a circle you don't allow for something to happen once, it will not happen again. If you have said it once, even if you're not in the room, the fact that you have said it the last time will not happen again. And as I think, as people in leadership positions, we have the ability to change the dynamic of at least the spaces that we work in. And those are immensely powerful circles of influence, right? Because you're talking about people you're working with in the same space, in the same realm. And that is, I think, it's something that we've been given as a gift, and we need to nurture that and, really stand up for each other, stick to what you believe in. Call out when somebody is wrong, but kindly. I keep saying this. When you're calling somebody out, when you're saying something, be aware of the fact that they perhaps don't know better and they deserve to be dealt with kindly. And you may not get kindness back. Don't expect that. You may not get the same treatment back from the same person. And if they're disappointing you, don't be disappointed because they don't know better. Just let it go. It'll come from somewhere else.
Yeah, right. So, okay, I understood how should a leader behave in their circle. So here is a quick fire, a rapid fire question for a leader who is dealing with a mansplaining or something like I know it better than you, just being because of my gender. What would be your couple of tips that they can instantly do, or even sexist jokes for that matter? I mean, I do see a lot of sexist jokes being played around me as well, and as a matter of fact, I raise my eyebrow and say, what did you just say? Let's roll the dice, let's turn the tables and see this, say the same thing and see.
Still, does it make
Like a joke? Can we see that? Yeah, just flip it and see it. So what are your tips to people who are dealing with mansplaining or sexist jokes all around them?
So one, call it out and say, by the way, that's sexist. I don't think it's appropriate to be said in a space like this. And also, if you can get away with saying it's because of people like you that we're still dealing with issues like this. In a very...
And straight-faced, isn't it?
non-committal, darling.
It's like,
don't
Go straight-faced and just poker face, done.
Okay. So sometimes it's amusing also, because in space, if it's not the corporate space, but I work in a lot of in between spaces, right? Because I'm working with not-for-profits, I'm working with 4 other for-profits on advisory capacities. And I just look at them, and I have done all kinds of things. I've done subliminal messaging, which is, not address the problem or the person, but just keep addressing the issue, which is the larger issue. So you keep talking about it in different ways. So you're putting subliminal messages. Then you're bringing up, most of these people have daughters. Okay, so you bring up their daughters, you bring up their homes, you bring up their environments. And then you're thinking to yourself, you don't want to connect with me at this level because I'm not your daughter. So there's this powerful line which says, people who respect only their mothers, daughters, and wives are still sexist because they are respecting women, only those women who they have a direct connection
relationship with. Yes.
Wow. So then so I'm sorry, but then I'm sorry, you're not feminist. You don't believe in equality because you only support the women around you in your circle who directly impact you. Right?
Yeah.
The gender narratives are far wider. So I have tried all kinds of things. I've tried things from calling it out instantly to sitting and explaining and spending hours and losing and then realizing not going anywhere, There are different kinds of people who will grow, learn, pick up things. Youngsters are a lot faster on the uptake. It's people who are older, who love you, who love working with you, will listen to you. People who have blocked you out already because they think you're too loud and you're too out there and you're too woke will cut you out because they're not willing to listen to you because they've already dissed you. So I've learned now to figure out what works with what. There is no one size fits all. It's a different thing every single time, and I'm still figuring it out. I fail sometimes miserably. Sometimes I'm surprised at my at the turnaround that has happened amongst the people around me. Sometimes I'm rolling my eyes saying, oh God, these people are never going to get it, are they? But it's all part of the journey. You've got to beat it constantly. It's exhausting, but you can't give up.
Yeah, true. I think by hook or by crook, let's make a change together. That's what I would say.
Absolutely.
Try whatever comes on your way and see if it works or not, and just get going doing it.
Absolutely.
So now we are almost at the end of the interview, and a last question. Of course, it is one of the most important questions, but the last question that I want to ask you is, you work with different types of organizations, right? Now, while we as individuals, as leaders, as change makers, as vocalists, as activists, we try to make a change, make a little dent in the world, I personally believe it is also important in an organizational level, we must make an impact. It should drill down, top down. Do you think that's right?
Yes, I think that's right. There has to be top down. It can't be. So there has to be top down and bottom up meeting in the middle, because it can't be either or, right? So there has to be a lot of investment in the change that we want to see that's happening at a corporate level, because in the outside world, there's not as much of a push for it. We're still battling a lot of complex narratives in the outside world, but in corporate environments, we can actually look at it very fundamentally from a focus point of view and say why this is important. And like I said, there's enough theory and research to show why it's beneficial to have these kind of workplaces which are open and culturally, more inclusive and things like that. So I believe that the top is where, if your intent is right at the top, you can drive it all the way down to the bottom, and you can learn bottom up also, because there's a lot to be learned from the bottom up piece. But if it's a top down thing, which is like a checklist, which is like, karna hai, this is something that's expected from us, let's just do it. Globally, people are doing it, competition's doing it. No. Ask yourself why you want to build an organization that's inclusive, that believes in equality, that supports equity, that's investing in social justice. And when you invest in an organization like that, those are the organizations also that are proven to be more profitable, do far better, commercially viable, etc., etc. So, but the purpose is where it comes from and it stems from. And you have to question your purpose, understand your value systems. Where is your alignment to the vision and the mission of the organization? How is this going to impact the, economics, environmental, spaces that we work in? The entire spectrum, how is it going to be impacted? And what kind of impact can we create? And that has to come top down. It can't be something that's at mid-level said, you take this, run this piece, because then there is no skin in the game. And then there's no top skin in the game. It sort of falls through the cracks. So it has to be top down.
Yeah, right. So what are the couple of tips for the CXOs? I'm talking about the top heads of the organizations that they can take up to make sure that their organizations don't have problems like stereotypes, problems like glass ceilings, or any kind of wrong practices that are stopping the growth of their leaders.
So one is, of course, education. A lot of people don't know it's not okay because we've grown up in space. India is a very commentary-based culture. People comment all the time. It's a very natural thing. We think it's, and also we're very nosy, right? We're also very naturally curious. So where is that fine line and balance? It's about being aware of what exists, is being aware of what's okay and what's not okay. It's about confronting what your biases are, both conscious and unconscious biases. So Firstly, education and awareness, because without creating that awareness, you don't even know where you're going wrong. Secondly, communicate, constantly, and live them. If you're saying one thing and doing something, it's like children, right? They grow up, and the reason they don't believe their parents is because the parents are telling them it's wrong to lie on one side, on the other side they've seen them lie, or similar things, right? They grow up copycatting. Culture is always copycatted. So even in organizations, if you have a culture which says one thing and does something else, and that's not aligned, you're centrally not aligned, you can't drive change because people are not going to believe you. Trust comes from authenticity. And if you're authentic, and if you're saying, I'm willing to learn, I don't know, let's learn together, is way better than saying, let's do this, I know better, and then not actually living those values or living your truth. And live your truth, even if it's messy, and even if it's confused, and even if you don't know, it's okay to say, I don't know, rather than to say, I know it all, and then to fall flat on your face because you don't. So authenticity, living your truth, awareness, education, going on that journey, making the effort to know, understand, and living that path, walking the talk.
Wow. I guess there couldn't be a better end to this an amazing conversation, right? I mean, what I picked up from this section is that it is important to be aware, because awareness is the first step to make a change. And as a leader of the organization, it is important to be aware of your own biases, and then only you can talk about others. If you have biases, you cannot expect your mid managers and lower managers to not have those same biases, and that's where entire thing stems down from. Secondly, lead with authenticity, because it's important to be authentic, because only then people will start trusting you. And if you don't know something, say I don't know. Nothing is going to happen. It's fine to learn instead of saying I know it all and then falling flat on your face. Isn't it? What do you think, Shrey?
Absolutely. Like I said, it starts with you. Just
Yes.
the same way it is in your personal spaces, it is in your professional spaces as well. It all starts with you.
Great. I think thank you so much, Shrey. I'm just going to end here. I don't want to add anything to this interview because you just said the final line properly and with the perfect sense. It all starts with you. When you are right, everything else falls right. So thank you so much for coming and gracing this place and chatting with me. It is always a pleasure to chat with you. This is not the first time I'm having a long conversation with you, but I love it every single time. I'm sure the audience would love it too.
Me too, Shri. Me too. Thank you so much for all the questions. And it's like when two friends meet and talk about anything, I think the chemistry and the sparkle is only but naturally coming off on the screen as well. So it was my joy and my pleasure as well. Thank you so much for having me.
Superb. All right. Thank you so much. And we will see you on the other end as well. Shreya, we'll let you go this time, but with a promise that we will talk to you once again.
Pick any topic and we shall make it happen.
Yes, absolutely. Wow, what a beautiful conversation that we both had. It was as if the long lost friends meeting after a long, long time. But there were a lot of interesting things that to be taken from the conversation. For leaders like you, what Shreya mentioned is you must look within before blaming, before contemplating to make a change in your world. What you believe is what is going to happen. So therefore, look within before you make a change outside. She also mentions how can you deal with mansplaining and sexist behavior around you, which is very, very prevalent in our culture, in our society right now. Try whatever works in your space, whether it is to calling out, whether it is to speak out, whether it is to be sarcasm, whether it is to be just rolling eyes about certain things that you do not approve of, or any other things like that. So that's the way you get rid of such situations, one step at a time. She had very interesting thoughts about organizations able to create an inclusive and diverse workplace where everybody thrives well. She says, as a head of the organization, are aware of the biases that you have whether it is conscious or unconscious biases. Because unless you are aware of your biases, it is difficult for you to trickle down that change in your employees. So go ahead, make that change. Secondly, concentrate on education. Education is the only way that can make a difference in the entire ecosystem of your organization. And thirdly, lead with authenticity, because when you're leading with authenticity is when trust stems down. So if you really want your employees to trust you and to give their best, you need to be able to be an authentic leader. These were my learnings from today's conversation. What has been your learning? What is that one action you are taking today to make a difference in your life? Let me know in the comments, and I will see you in the next episode of Setback Leader. See you.